And we are live. Welcome to Tonight in America. I'm your host, Dontaris Jones, and we have an exciting show tonight for you. Well, it's afternoon, actually, so good evening, everyone. You bit a bit of a different time slot. I'm having used to going this early in a while. For the last two shows, I've been going early at like 3 p.m. 3 a.m., excuse me. As you can see, I got a new camera. So we're a little bit more crystal clear now. I have a 4K webcam now. So as you can see right now, you can see me clearly. So now we have a better camera. So now we won't be having like any issues right now going forth. So I brought this off of Amazon and I was waiting until it got here before I went back live again. And I just received it recently. And I still didn't go live. I waited a couple of days or so because I had some other prior engagements to deal with. But now I'm here today I'm on the air for like a little bit. I'm not going to be in the air for too long because I have stuff I have to go take care of. So we're just going to speed run through the news right now. Got two videos for us to watch inside the fall of communist Cuba and Mehdi Hasan and Michael Knowles part 2 of their debate that I didn't finish covering. So let's go ahead and just jump into the news right now. U.S. military conducts new strikes on Iran. Strikes come after Iran launched drones at commercial ships. Iran says it struck at U.S. base in response. U.S. forces conducted new military strikes against Iran on Wednesday after Tehran launched drones at commercial ships in the Strait of Hormuz. According to U.S. officials, even as Washington and Tehran continue their efforts to forge a diplomatic settlement to the conflict and keep a fragile ceasefire intact. American forces shot down Iranian drones that hit a drone control station near Bandar Abbas, a major port city in southern Iran located on the Strait of Hormuz. According to two of the officials, the site posed a threat to U.S. forces and commercial traffic in the strait. The official said Iran fired four one-way attack drones at American and commercial ships earlier Wednesday. The two officials said American F-A-18, F-16, and F-35 jet fighters shot down the drones. Then the F-A-18s hit the ground control unit before it could launch a fifth drone, one of the officials said. So there was more recent attacks today that I didn't pull up those articles yet. I didn't read those. When I come back on stream next time, I'm going to cover some of the recent attacks today, yesterday, and the day before that one. Because this came out on May 28th. Some of these articles are a little bit outdated, but like I said before, these were for this stream right here that I had previously had planned. I just didn't go live for a couple of days. So we're gonna just speed run through this. So Iran wants billions in frozen funds back to make a deal with Iran. The money has become a sticking point in talks with Iran, insisting that meaningful negotiations cannot begin without the funds released. The United States and Iran have sent conflicting signals about what it would take to reach a deal to end the war. But amid competing demands from both sides, Tehran has not wavered from one condition: getting access to billions of its own money now in frozen foreign bank accounts. The funds have become a sticking point in talks with Iran, insisting that meaningful negotiations cannot begin without the money's release. Iran state media reported on Tuesday. A senior U.S. administration official who declined to be named told reporters on Sunday that while the question of Iran's frozen funds could potentially be part of a deal down the line, Iran would have to commit to giving up its highly enriched uranium first. No dust, no dollars, the official said, referring to President Trump's turn for the highly enriched uranium, excuse me, I got a phone call coming, which he calls nuclear dust. On Wednesday, Mr. Trump said at a cabinet meeting, "We have control of the money that they claim is theirs. We'll keep control of that money when they behave properly and when they do what's right. We'll let them have their money, but right now we're not doing that." So Trump's made it clear that they're not going to release the funds to are not going to release the funds of the Iranian assets that the United States currently has on hold in frozen bank accounts in foreign countries until Iran capitulates to the U.S.'s commands and gives up their highly enriched uranium. Iran's made it clear that they're not going to give up their uranium at all. Their ballistic missiles are off discussion. The control of the Strait of Hormuz is off the discussion. So they made it very clear. They want what they want. They want maximalist demands. The United States wants maximalist demands. They both want the maximalist demands. So right now it's a bit of the same right now. Nothing really has changed. Like they've had like recent bombings or whatever. Iran just bombed Bahrain just the other day because the US struck like I think it was a oil freight from Iran. I believe it was that. And, you know, Iran retaliated by striking Bahrain, of course. Like the ceasefire is barely holding on. So it's a bit of the same, pretty much. Nothing's really changed. Like the ceasefire is barely holding on. Everyone's got maximalist demands that need to be met, and no one seems to be willing to fulfill them. So we pretty much like we're still at a stalemate right now. And it's clear that the fighting is going to continue on. It's just only a matter of time. So let's go on to another article I got here from the New York Times. Trump says he feels no political pressure to make an Iran deal. President Trump held out for hope for a peace agreement, but said high oil prices would not force his hand. President Trump on Wednesday held the door open for more negotiations around Iran, but insisted he did not feel any political pressure to make a deal to end the unpopular 3-month war and lower gas prices. He rejected any suggestion that the looming midterm elections and high gas prices stemming from Iran's closure of the Strait of Hormuz had increased the pressure on him to strike an agreement that would reopen the waterway to oil tankers and other commercial ships. I don't care about the midterms. Look what happened last night, he said. The comment was an apparent reference to the victory in Texas on Tuesday night by a Trump-backed candidate, Ken Paxton, over a longtime Republican stalwart, Senator John Cornyn, in a primary runoff election. Later on Wednesday, the U.S. conducted what it said were self-defense strikes in southern Iran after Iran launched drones over the Strait of Hormuz, according to U.S. officials. As for gas prices, which hit a four-year high in the United States over Memorial Day weekend, Mr. Trump dismissed the notion that they were adding to the sense of urgency he felt in pursuit of a deal. The primary urgency is that we can't let Iran have a nuclear weapon, Mr. Trump said. He predicted that prices were going to come down fast. Even though he hasn't really stated how that is going to be the case, he just keeps repeating that over and over as if that's going to be just happen immediately. So this is just pretty much, like I said, it's just pretty much about the same. Trump says that we're almost at the precipice of making a deal with Iran, and then Iran comes right back out later and denies that's the case, that they have maximalist demands that need to be met, and then we're just right back to square one over and over and over again, and then the bombing continues on. You know, Trump starts this. I'm not gonna call this a legal war. I'll just call this like a war of choice. And now we just seems to be stuck in this endless loop of just like endless negotiations that are just really are not going to lead nowhere. And just pretty much the pause. It's just pretty much just like pausing the fighting right now. And the fighting is just going to continue on at some point, anyways. That is just what's going to happen. So that's that on the Iran stuff right now. Like I said, I'll read some of the articles from the recent couple of days, and then I'll just come back and update you guys on that one later on. Now we're going to get into our coverage of our 2 videos that we have today that we're going to react to. So we're going to react to Nick Shirley's video inside the fall of communist Cuba first, and then we're going to react to Mehdi Hasan and Michael Knowles, their debate they had recently. That was 3 weeks ago.
What percentage of people do you think are suffering here in Cuba?
La mayoría. La mayoría.
What's your thoughts on communism? ¿Qué piensas de comunismo?
De lo más malo que ha existido en la vida ha sido el comunismo. Porque
porque realmente ninguno es comunista.
None of the gas stations are even in operation right now because there's quite literally no gas.
We stand out like sore thumbs here, so they're wondering why we're here with cameras, interviewing people. They want to know what's happening and what people are saying. That's why people are not talking to us much.
They're asking why are we trying to leave the hotel early. Cuba right now is facing one of the largest humanitarian crises in the world. Cuba's government is a one-party communist-ruled country, and they are facing massive food shortages, daily blackouts, and a lack of medicine. And right now, a U.S. blockade is restricting oil and gas from coming inside of the country. With communism and socialism on the rise in the West, I wanted to see what life in communism is really like firsthand, as Cuba has been living underneath communism for over 60 years. Upon arrival, I completed all required documents and had received a visa for journalistic activity. However, once I landed, all my camera gear was seized, and within 24 hours, I was planning my escape out of Cuba after their intelligence followed me all day and a 2-star general came searching for me at the hotel. Now let's go see the reality of Cuba and eventually plan our escape out of Cuba. Where are the people at? ¿Dónde está la gente? No hay nadie aquí en la...
I'm going to put these at 1.5 speed, so we're going to listen to this a little bit fast. Because like I said, I am pushed for time a little bit, so.
Calle, no hay nadie aquí en esta casa. ¿Dónde está la gente?
The problem is that there's no gasoline. It's not easy to move. Anyway, we have a lot of limitation for work.
None of the gas stations are even in operation right now because there's quite literally no gas. When the United States captured Maduro, their main supplier of gas and oil was shut off. So the country right now has hardly any gas. And if you do want to get gas, you have to wait in a line from the government. The guy that we're in our taxi with right now, he said his position to get gas is $1,200 in line, and gas from the government costs around $1. But gas, if you were to buy it on the black market, costs $10 per liter. That's $40 per gallon if you were to buy gas here in Cuba. Before they captured Maduro, was there gasoline in the gas stations?
Always. It was easy. Nowadays it's really bad, but it was easy to get gasoline.
And for you,
every day you can go to the gasoline station and buy it normally. It was normal, but nowadays it's really bad.
¿Y cómo está sobreviviendo la gente aquí en Cuba?
Just imagine the reality of it. With 1,000 sacrifices and 1,000 daily struggles, the average Cuban citizen is the one really going through absolute hell here in this country.
It's so interesting being here in Cuba because everything is just like empty. It's almost very like North Korea-like. When you come into a massive plaza, and there's not even cars. Listen, right now you can't even hear a car in sight. And they have all of this other portraits of people and past leaders of Cuba, yet there's hardly anyone even here. It's very strange here. They're saying that this is even more quiet than during COVID, during the pandemic. Less people are even leaving the streets than during the pandemic. That's how bad the crisis is right now. And the Cuban people simply just don't have money, and they also just do not have the resources like gasoline to be able to go out and continue their normal lives right now. We headed to a nearby hospital, and from this moment on,
And people would sit up here and tell you that living on the communism is the best option, alternative to like capitalism or whatever. Like a lot of these communists, these self-proclaimed communist activists, or sit up here and tell you that capitalism is the root of all evil. We need to implement a system that is going to give the means of production back to the people. You know, but we don't even, but in the United States, it's kind of hard to really do that because we don't really make anything anymore. All that went overseas. China, a communist in name, of course, because they call the CCP party, the Communist Chinese Party. They've even embraced capitalism, and they're quote unquote communist. So, and then taking back the means of production over here in the United States, what means of production? We don't make anything. We are a database system now. We like literally like now we've gone on from like building stuff, have opened up factories and creating stuff here in the great country of the United States now to basically being the hub for like data centers or whatever. If anything now, I mean, we're more of like a database society now. And the means of production, that's more towards China, the Philippines, all these other countries that are not us. So I don't understand exactly what means of production we're taking back. Like I said, you can look at this right now. Look at this. This is what these people living on. This is what these communist activists want. They want this type of environment for us, but this environment it's not the best option.
We noticed we were being followed by Cuban police and their intelligence after the word got out. I was asking people about communism. Inside of a communist country, there's no such thing as freedom of speech or freedom of the press. In fact, if you speak out against the current regime or against communism, your neighbor can then report you to an area inside of the neighborhood where the government or the police will then come after you, and you have the risk of being imprisoned for speaking out against the regime. And what's the reality of living inside of communism? ¿Qué es la realidad de vivir en comunismo?
Son presidentes todos, son jefes todos.
El gobierno.
Sí, así que funciona.
Hay mucha gente que está muriendo por el comunismo.
Por eso mismo, porque no hay pastillas, no hay nada para darle a la gente.
And what would be your last message to the people about living life in communism?
Bueno, el último mensaje que daré es que lo más malo que hay aquí en Cuba es el comunismo, que viven todo en comunismo. Eso es lo más malo que hay aquí en Cuba ahora mismo, el comunismo.
¿Y qué piensa ahora de su propio presidente, Canal?
Bueno, yo pienso que no tiene la capacidad para ser presidente, porque nos estamos muriendo de hambre. Si no trabajamos, nos morimos de hambre.
And do you believe that it's the responsibility of the government to give food to the people? ¿Crees que es la responsabilidad del gobierno para dar comida a la gente?
Sí, porque son los jefes, tienen que abastecer al pueblo.
¿Qué piensa de lo que está haciendo Donald Trump con el aceite y con la gasolina, como no está dejando gasolina para entrar? Like people are very scared to answer and even give questions and responses here because of communism. And because when you say communism, when they say that they control the food or they control the jobs, they also control the freedom of press here. So a lot of people aren't used to talking on camera. And ¿qué piensa eso de
Que se cinga días Canel. Que se cinga días Canel.
Security had noticed that 2 random individuals had appeared while we were doing these interviews, and they decided it was time to leave. What happened while we were conducting some of those interviews?
Right now, we were finishing one of the interviews. Some undercover cops, you could just tell they're undercover cops. They came out of nowhere. They got on better used phones than the average person here, and they were right away communicating with each other, and they were trying to corner us out. So that's why we had to get out of there.
So you do have government spies going around making sure that certain things aren't said.
Of course, and we stand out like sore thumbs here, so they're wondering why we're here with cameras, interviewing people. They want to know what's happening and what people are saying. That's why people are not talking to us much.
That's also why you don't ever see any videos come out of Cuba.
That's 100% why you don't see videos come out of Cuba. It's very limited, the videos that you see come out of Cuba, because they control everything.
We headed into downtown Havana with the hopes that we'd shake off the 2 spies that were telling us. And I want you to notice the pure decay here. The streets and the buildings look like they're about to fall apart.
Bro.
And this is due to 50 years of no innovation inside a
Bro.
communist country. We then went into one of the local markets to exchange some
All the money we give these people, and this is what their country looks like, bro. Like, what's the point of the foreign aid if they don't use it to actually, like, I don't know, invest their societies and turn them into something beautiful, something extravagant, and then they look like this? It's because the corrupt government takes all the money for themselves. And then these progressives will sit up here and tell you that it's all imperialism, it's all capitalism. These billionaire classes always take money for themselves and never use that money to help the average person, not realizing that they open up jobs for Americans to go work at these facilities. Now, of course, you got affirmative action and DEI that comes in and prioritizes certain groups over the other and discriminates against some other groups. But the point of the matter is, like, in America, it's far better to live here than it is there. As you can see by Exhibit A. I mean, you drive down this little road right here, looking around these buildings. These buildings are literally look like this is like going back towards like the 1950s at least. It's just like run down, like no innovation, no recent paint jobs and nothing like that. It's like, oh, broken down buildings that look like they should have been torn down 10 years ago.
cash for some Cuban pesos.
And here in Cuba, their inflation has hit really hard here, so their peso does not really go that far, so the dollar does go a lot farther here. In fact, the average salary of someone here for the month is $14 USD. So right now we're exchanging here on the streets of Cuba, and you get a lot better price for your dollar versus if you were to do it at the airport here in Cuba. How would you say life is here in Cuba?
La situación está mala.
What do you think is going to happen with the future of Cuba?
Usted que venga para acá.
¿Crees que los Estados Unidos van a tomar Cuba?
Claro que sí. Claro, tú ven para acá.
¿Y te gustaría que los Estados Unidos toman Cuba?
Claro que sí.
¿Y por qué?
Porque que vengan, no está aquí tan malo. Claro, para trabajar con ustedes.
So what's your opinion about communism?
El comunismo es malo.
And why is it bad? ¿Por qué está mal?
No está malo, no hay comida aquí.
¿Qué fue el cambio después de Maduro fue capturado? Yeah, they can't talk about it. It's kind of interesting asking about these political situations. You could talk about the United States completely freely, but a lot of people are timid, and you have to respect that because you don't want to put them in a bad situation. But people are very timid to talk about stuff politically here in the streets of Cuba. I mean, look at this one. You have coming down the street right here. This is just normal here in Cuba. It's kind of weird. The reason for the old cars here in Cuba is because in 1959 is when communism took effect, and the United States then later put an embargo on Cuba, which stopped new companies from working with Cuba. So all they had left was cars from the 1950s and earlier. Innovation tends not to take place in communism because there's no incentive for for an entrepreneur to go out and create something because he'll receive no benefit because the state or the country, the government controls what goes in and out and also how much money you take from that underneath communism. So it completely kills entrepreneurship, which then kills innovation, and then you come up with a stagnant society like this one here in Cuba where they have not developed any much further than since around the 1950s. All these buildings here are still standing from the 1950s, but they
I
have
was
not
correct earlier.
or there's nothing new here inside this country. It's actually kind of sad to see.
This man right here will explain just how dangerous it is to speak out against communism inside of a communist country.
How's life in communism? ¿Qué es la realidad? What's the reality of it?
El comunismo. Ya. Esa parte ahí no te puedo contestar esa parte porque no sé qué decirte.
La gente aquí, the people here, no pueden hablar sobre el comunismo, hablar en contra del gobierno.
Aquí tú hablas en contra del comunismo y te meten preso. Te desaparecen. Lo que pasa es que la gente tiene miedo a hablar, ¿me entiendes? Pero aquí tú hablas y te desapareces.
So if you speak bad about communism here in Cuba, you'll be taken to prison and you'll just disappear.
Te pueden meter días preso, ¿me entiendes? Te dan golpe y todo.
¿Es imposible para hablar sobre comunismo?
No tengo nada que decir.
Okay. Yeah, this is what's super interesting about talking about communism. They cannot speak bad about communism here inside of Cuba.
And because of the lack of oil inside the country, there's constant blackouts that are taking place each and every single day inside of Cuba. And it's even affecting the education of the children. In fact, right now, inside of Cuba, the main university, the university that Fidel Castro attended, is currently shut down. And so right now, the children and the university students of Cuba are having a hard time getting education.
This is the National University of Cuba. I mean, this is a huge stadium they have, tons of seats, a track, and a football pitch, but it's all just has not been maintained whatsoever. Just the vents are all rusting and eroding. ¿Qué tal la vida aquí en Cuba? How's life here in Cuba?
This is crazy.
Más o menos, no tan bien, hay problemas de transporte y eso, pero
What would you say the biggest problem is? ¿Qué diría que es el problema más grande para un joven?
el problema grande que hay en Cuba aquí es la luz.
La luz. ¿Cuántas veces al día se cortan la luz? How many times a day do they cut out the lights?
Casi todos los días, a cualquier hora. A cualquier hora.
Yeah, how do you live through that as a young child? ¿Cómo se vive eso mientras que está un joven?
No muy bien, la echamos la luz, además el estudio. Muy bien.
So the lights are affecting your entire life. Entonces los luces están afectando toda tu vida.
Cuando viene, a veces no viene más hasta por la mañana, o la quitan general en Cuba entera. Y bueno.
We left the university and did the most touristy thing we could do, and that was to hop into a 1950 Chevrolet and tour the city of Havana with one of the local guides. We did this in the hopes that we would have less people following us. However, it just brought even more attention to us when we got back to the hotel.
How come here you guys still use old cars from the 1950s?
Porque estos son coches tradicionales antes del triunfo de la revolución. Coches del 50, del 59 y quedó de patrimonio de la humanidad y trabajamos para una agencia del gobierno.
So you guys work for the government still?
Del gobierno. Trabajamos para el gobierno.
And this is kind of a random question, but do you know what a Tesla is? ¿Sabe qué es una Tesla?
No.
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 ¿Nunca he escuchado de un auto que se llama un Tesla?
No.
No. BMW?
Tampoco.
Right now in Poly Market, there's a 45% chance that there's a clash between the U.S. military and the Cuban military. Do you think there will be a clash with the two militaries in 2026?
Bueno, eso es lo que pensamos muchos cubanos. Eso es lo que pensamos.
It's not they're not going to win that one. Cuba's military is not even much better than Venezuela's military. And at best, their weaponry is like literally outdated. Now, what they have advantage on us is they have the Shahid drones from Iran. They have a substantial amount. So, like I mentioned before in my previous stream, the fight with Cuba is not. It's going to be as easy as it looks. They're going to get some casualties on us if we were to go at a full frontal assault. But at the same time, they're still going to lose. Even some of their own political leaders have already said that they're not going to win the war in the United States. So it's a losing battle. It's a losing battle for them.
Muchos cubanos porque queremos la mejoría de nuestro país. Para los niños en las escuelas, los hospitales, las casas, los barrios humildes, que tengan una mejoría, ¿me entiendes?
So do you think it would be good if there was some intervention between the two militaries?
Sí, pienso que sí. Pienso que sí. Nosotros lo que queremos es tener la tranquilidad.
¿Qué piensa pasaría? What do you think would happen in that war?
Bueno, no pienso que sea una guerra en total. Pienso que sea una mejoría para el pueblo. Para el pueblo, que es lo que queremos, una mejoría.
Because what's happened here in Cuba has not been good for the general public.
No está pasando bien. No la estamos pasando bien. No es normal que tengamos muchos problemas económicos.
And what do the people of Cuba think about Donald Trump and Marco Rubio?
Bueno, no te puedo decir exactamente qué piensan las personas porque cada cual tiene sus distintos pensamientos. Pero bueno, si es para bien para el pueblo y para nosotros los cubanos, que para bien sea.
You think it's necessary for change to happen here in Cuba? ¿Cree que es necesario que hay cambios aquí?
Sí, pienso que sí. Pienso que sí, muchos años. Y todo el pueblo quiere que cambie la cosa.
And what would you say the reality of communism is?
Bueno, la realidad del comunismo, unos sí, otros no. Y pienso que el comunismo sea todos iguales. No unos sí y otros no. Tiene que ser todo parejo.
And it's not like that. No, it's así.
Y no es así.
Right now, they say 7 out of 10 people here in Cuba are going without their necessary meals here. Would you say that's true?
Es real, es real. Ahora mismo tenemos muchos problemas con el alimento. El aceite, el arroz, los frijoles, la carne, el pollo. Muchos problemas. Todo se está yendo para las pymes. Y todo el mundo no tiene la misma posibilidad de presupuesto para poder comprar los alimentos.
And was this happening before the blockade, or is this just now happening?
Sí, pienso que sí.
So it's not new that this is happening?
No es nuevo.
For how many years have the people of Cuba been suffering?
Bueno, pienso que hace rato ya. Pienso que hace tiempo ya que el pueblo no está sufriendo por el tema del alimento y muchas cosas que el pueblo sufre, que no se expresa porque tenemos miedo de la libertad de expresión. Porque algunas veces podemos expresar algo que no nos puedan entender y nos perjudica, ¿me entiendes? Por eso es que hay muchas personas que no hablan.
And that's something I have noticed when we have been talking to people is a lot of people are scared to talk about the current situation here in Cuba because of communism, essentially.
Hay muchas personas que no quieren expresar lo que sienten porque tienen miedo a cualquier tipo de situación, a que puedan ir presos, a que le puedan quitar las casas, a muchas cosas como ha pasado. Hay personas que han expresado lo que sienten y han tenido problemas con el gobierno.
And how much does it cost right now for gas?
Ahora tenemos $10 un litro de gasolina.
$10 a
Y la estamos
liter,
comprando en Estados
bro.
Unidos.
And how much?
Ahora, mira, no hay gasolina en ningún Cuba. Por eso que ha subido los
Bro.
impuestos y ha subido todo por el tema del petróleo y la gasolina.
What would be your message to all the people in the world about what's actually happening here in Cuba?
Queremos una mejoría, necesitamos una mejoría para que el pueblo esté bien.
And this is where things began to get really weird. As we arrived back to the hotel, this man began following us. He was all alone and he kept moving as we moved. Security noticed him telling us. We played it cool and left the hotel a few hours later. And after one interview on the street, we caught the web of spies following and monitoring everything I was doing as this man exposed the raw reality of Cuba unfiltered.
What happens at nighttime here in Cuba? ¿Qué pasa aquí en la noche?
En la noche tú la ves vacía, que no hay nada. No hay nada.
There's nothing.
No hay diversión, no hay nada, no hay luz, no hay agua, no hay nada. No hay comida, no hay medicamento, no hay nada. Yo no sé
Bro,
cómo
that's
se hace.
crazy.
Would you like the United States to come in and have military intervention here?
Claro, va a salir de esta situación. Por supuesto. Va a salir de esta historia.
What is the situation right now?
Que no hay nada, no tenemos luz, no tenemos comida, no tenemos medicamento, no tenemos la primera necesidad de un hospital. No hay nada, no tenemos nada. No hay un ser humano que pueda vivir así. Es demasiado.
And what would be your message to the rest of the world about the realities of what's happening here in Cuba? ¿Cuál sería su mensaje a todo el mundo de la realidad de lo que está pasando aquí en Cuba?
Si te estoy diciendo cuál es la verdad, el que te diga algo que no sea lo que yo te estoy diciendo es porque tiene miedo. Pero es lo que está pasando a todo el mundo. Mira esa vieja a mí. ¿Dónde está? Con el perro pidiendo comida. Mira ahí, a todo el mundo. Que no tiene acá. Mira ahí.
Sí, lo veo.
Mira ahí. Ven, mira ahí. Pregúntale ahí.
Hola, señora.
Explícale ahí todo lo que tú estás pasando.
No, pero no para sin video.
Si la gente no quiere, the people do not want
Pero ese
video.
es el problema, que la gente no quiere video. Porque la meten presa. Ese es el problema. El problema es que nos meten preso cuando salten por video. Si ahora tú publicas ese video,
Man.
ahora si tú publicas ese video, yo voy preso.
I know how privileged we are and you live in the United States, but like, bro, you can't even express how you really feel about anything on camera in these countries because there's fearfulness of being put in prison. That's crazy, man. That is like, bro, it's hell to live in there. Cuba, some South American countries, the United Kingdom, all of Europe, really. China. Like China, pretty much all of Asia too as well, all the communist-run countries of Asia. You speak illy about your government, say anything bad about their politics, and next thing you know, you're jailed or worse. You put 10 feet under. Man, it's. I can imagine how much hell it is to live in these countries. That's why I'd be thankful that you're born in the first world countries and you have freedom of speech. And don't take that shit for granted every day. There's a reason why they fight to come here. But the difference is they bring their backwards culture with them. And that's the reason why they're never really compatible with the West.
Por eso, vamos por eso.
What's your thoughts on communism? ¿Qué piensas de comunismo?
Lo más malo que ha existido en la vida. De lo más malo que ha existido en la vida ha sido el comunismo. Porque realmente ninguno es comunista.
What do you mean by that? Ninguna
Lo que hacen es enriquecerse y explotar al pueblo, es lo único que hacen.
¿Qué significa eso para ti como no hay ninguna comunista? Como que
No, porque no hay, eso no existe. El comunismo es la igualdad del hombre por el hombre, aquí eso no existe. Aquí eso no existe. Todos ellos son los que tienen todo. Ellos tienen luz, ellos tienen los mejores carros del año pisteando, ellos tienen petróleo, ellos tienen gasolina, tienen todo. Y el pueblo no tiene nada. Y las mayores bipimis son de ellos.
¿Y por qué piensa que gente defiende el comunismo cuando hemos visto que no funciona?
No funciona. El que defiende el comunismo, nada más que tiene que ser la familia Castro, o alguien que le tenga miedo, o alguien que vive del gobierno, que se enriquece de esa dictadura.
And right now in the United States, a lot of people think that communism and socialism is the way to go. What would be your message to them? Because they think capitalism has failed them. Mucha gente en los Estados Unidos ahora creen que comunismo y socialismo es la manera de donde deberíamos ir.
No. Eso es lo peor.
¿Qué sería su mensaje a ellos?
Lo peor que existiera, lo peor que tú puedes hacer en la vida es pasar al socialismo, al comunismo, porque es la gran mierda. No existe, hay que te vea la miseria, a la obstinación, al hambre, a la hostigación, a todo. Fíjate que nada de lo que tú puedas, nada del salario, nada más te alcanza para comprar una botella de aceite. ¿Cómo tú crees que tú puedes vivir así? ¿Cómo tú puedes vivir con una libreta de razonamiento que nada más que te dan 3 libras de azúcar y una de sal? Y hay cada 15, cada 4, 6 meses, 7 años, te dan una posta de pollo o un huevo. El huevo no viene hace un año. Hace un año que no viene el huevo. Imagínate.
Desde que no ha tomado un huevo.
El huevo tienes que comprarlo. El huevo tienes que comprarlo por la calle de las bipipi. Pero el estado de la libreta. Ya no tienen nada. Yo no sé qué significa la libreta. porque ya no viene nada. Ya ellos saben los puntos claves, que saben que hay comité central, que hay punto cero, que sabe, todo el mundo sabe dónde están los capos. Ellos
Video, I didn't know that was the video. It froze. Give it just a second. Okay. Yeah, we're back. Okay, we're back.
saben dónde están los capos.
¿Qué es un buen sueldo aquí en Cuba?
¿Me ha metido papo?
Ahí está.
¿Estás tirando papo?
Wow.
You drop any frames?
You can film that for that lady. Okay, Trevor. Wow. And última pregunta.
This lady had spawned out of nowhere and began spying on us. For instance, look at it. She comes into frame right here, and then she hides behind the lamppost, and then all of a sudden she starts filming us, and then when she goes to the other side of the lamppost, she then begins to act like she's on a phone call. However, she continues to point her camera towards our direction. The guy I'm interviewing then notices that she's filming us. He goes and confronts her, and she runs to the other side of the street. She then turns the corner, and my security guard follows her to see where she goes, and who does she meet up with? She meets up with the man who was following us inside of the hotel. And after we confirmed that we were being followed by Cuban intelligence and their spies were spying on us, we hurried back up to our hotel room and made a plan to escape Cuba.
She makes her way through the woods to him, and then she goes, no, like saying, don't sit here. Boom, sits there. So they're together, 100%. Come back to the hotel. What is there? They're 100% watching us. Option 2 is more flights on me. They're 100% on.
So you think that'll leave tomorrow morning?
We're gonna deal with the pressure at one point, which I think we're going to anyways. We do it right to the Liberty at the airport, where there's public eyes. We're in Cuba. We're coming down. So this is a different bugging for us. Think we can get out tonight? I was thinking about making a call to see if we were to do that, how far the U.S. Coast Guard would need us to be. There are some there's goodies and advantages.
It's like this is literally the North Korea of Latin America, and we have spies on us.
They're 100%. 100%. We're not there. I'm 100% convinced. But if we grab our bags right now, we make an escape, they're gonna say, hey, they just took off. They're gonna shut this whole bitch down looking for us.
And to make things even worse, Cuba was having their May Day march just outside our hotel in the morning, so all around the hotel, military and Cuba government was surrounding the hotel, protecting the streets for the march the next morning.
My thoughts. So tomorrow they're gonna have the march for the May 1st march. It's a big march. So it starts at 6. They're either gonna come for us by 3 or 4. So we have to be out of here by then. And whether that's us bouncing around the city in a pair of 2 and one off on their own, and maybe I'll be back up. We have to distract them enough by the time it's our time to board on the airport at 8 a.m. They're too occupied doing this march thing.
We took a bit of a risky move and headed down to the lobby to act as if we had no idea they were spying on us and act very casual. So security puffed on some Cuban cigars, I drank some water, security chatted up with some of the people working at the hotel, and then we went back upstairs and barricaded ourselves into the hotel room for the night. And then at 4 a.m. we made our attempts to escape the hotel.
Alright, 4 a.m. now, we're in the elevator, we're heading down to the bottom lobby, and we're making our way out. Right now, people are gathering up on the streets. We got one security guard down the bottom, making sure that it's clear for us to walk out of the lobby right now. And now we're heading out, getting on a taxi, and making our way to the airport as fast as possible.
One of the security guards was stopped by someone at the hotel as she asked why we are leaving the hotel early, and she would not let us leave. They were stalling for some reason, and then when we did try to make it out to go get a taxi, the guy barely let us out the door, and then when we got out to get a taxi, they called us back in.
We're running into some complications here. We're trying to get out. They're asking why we're trying to leave the hotel early.
And they took us into the back room of the hotel, and we had a meeting with a 2-star general who interrogated us for 10 to 15 minutes about why we're trying to leave Cuba, what was our purpose of our travels, what kind of questions we were asking the people on the streets, what kind of footage we got. The general then said we could go, and he said they would get us a taxi to the airport. However, we waited for 5 minutes, and there was no taxi. We thought we were about to get set up, so we left the hotel and set off on foot to escape Cuba.
As soon as we made it down to the hotel lobby, they had their guys down there. We had immigration, and they brought us in for an interview. Gabe, so what's the current circumstances that we've got going on right now? We're trying to find a taxi. We've left the hotel. We're a few miles out now. No taxi.
This is crazy.
How are we getting out of Cuba?
So, number 1, second we got downstairs.
This is crazy.
What you want to call their undercover police? Walk into the lobby, just playing it cool, acting like it was nothing. Once you and Al came downstairs, and you guys made your way up to the front, 2-star general came out of nowhere, and he asked as politely as possible, but with firm action, like, hey, I need to sit down, we need to talk to you guys. And then he realized that he was pressing, so he's like, hey, can you just bring in your friends so we can talk? Now, the guy, what's going on? And he goes, I would want to talk inside. That's when he came outside to the outside lobby. I'm trying to just engage the conversation there, and he said, I would like to talk inside. We had our conversation. Now, they let us leave, and now we're on foot by the university and the hospital, and we got about another 1.5 miles to the airport, 2 miles. So we're on foot. Hopefully we can get a taxi at some point if we don't get squeezed in before.
And there's no taxis out right now. That's a bit of a problem right now. The streets are empty.
Empty, and everybody's going the opposite direction.
By the grace of God, we found one taxi driver in all of Havana who agreed to take us to the airport. The only problem, it's a tricycle that only goes 10 miles per hour.
All right, we got our taxi. It's our taxi to the airport. Not the taxi I thought we were gonna get into to make it to the airport. This is our taxi we have right now. It's the only option we had available. We're gonna try to find another car taxi because this is taking too long to get to the airport, and our flight's gonna leave. Now that's it. Right now we currently have entire Now, we weren't able to get another taxi. We've been in this taxi for the past hour or so. The sun came up, finally made it to the airport, and now this is our last stretch in order to get out of Cuba. They might press us one more time inside the airport, so we don't know exactly. We're not out of here for certain, for good. They might make one last push at the airport. They could either ask us some more questions or not let us board our flight. They do have all my camera gear inside the airport right now, so I can get all of that. And everyone's on the know that we're trying to leave Cuba right now. See if they let us board our commercial flight. We made it to the airport, and now I had to go get my camera gear that they had seized just 24 hours before. They questioned me for another 30 minutes. They then took one of my security guards to question him as well, and then they ended up letting us get onto. Oh my gosh. Muchas gracias. Gracias. Oh, we're making it onto the plane right now. I've never been so happy to make it onto the plane.
I got pulled up by two guys. They wanted to do the smooth approach, like, hey, what's going on? Why are you guys here? Why are you guys leaving so soon? You guys got here yesterday. After going back and forth, and I was done with the small talk already. I was like, bro, something's gonna happen. Let it happen already. And he's like, I'm like, listen, we had a 2-star general at our hotel at 5 in the morning. You guys are here now. We were pressed all day yesterday. What's up? And he's like, even the president knows that you guys are here.
The president of Communist Cuba knew that we were here.
He knows that we were here. Facts. They know. They've been watching us all day. They know that we're here. So.
You might not see 3 more happier men in the world right now. Made it out. Oh my gosh.
Bro, that was crazy. All right. That one was crazy. Man. What do you guys think about that one? Fuck, that was crazy. I almost was scared for their life. Oh, man. Going to a communist country is a dangerous one because there's no freedom of speech there. Even if you have a journalistic past or whatever, you're still under their thumb. You're still in their territory. So that's the dangerous part about going to some of these countries, is that you open yourself up to possibly a dangerous situation. So now let's go ahead and finish off today's stream with the second half of Mehdi Hasan versus Michael Knowles.
Circumstances, and I want to zoom in on that. President Donald Trump argued that his imposition
Iran either. A more expansive president might do that, as Republicans and Democrats have done. Trump, once again, I point out, is so restrained here, so moderate, so well within the mainstream, that we aren't even seeing regime change in either of those places.
Well, I think it was briefly mentioned, the idea of emergency acts and extenuating circumstances, and I want to zoom in on that. President Donald Trump argued that his imposition of tariffs during Liberation Day was justified under the International Emergencies Economic Powers Act, or the IEEPA. However, the Supreme Court found the IEEPA does not authorize the president to impose sweeping tariffs such as that in Liberation Day. With this in mind, how should we think about the limits of presidential authority when it comes to using emergency powers to shape major policy? You
okay.
Take it away.
I'm going to cheat before I answer that question. I'm going to go back to something Michael said a moment ago, because facts matter. The war in Iran is a joint US-Israeli operation. The idea that Israel killed Khamenei on their own is absurd.
Yeah,
look at the report.
I agree.
Came to Trump's intelligence agency came and confirmed that Khamenei was in this building, this time, at this place. Do you want to kill him? So let's just be very clear that we are responsible for that. There was no international legal justification for it. Every international law professor said it was illegal. Every international lawyer said what happened in Venezuela was illegal. We defied. There's a reason why our allies don't back us in these places.
The Venezuela stuff, no one cares.
A great question. We can actually talk specifics. You mentioned Supreme Court. You'll notice, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think, and this is good faith, I swear, I don't think Michael has said the word Supreme Court today. Maybe I missed it. But let's talk specifics. I mentioned the 9-0 ruling by the Supreme Court on Kilmar Garcia. Trump just said F off. The tariffs case in February, we all knew tariffs are taxes. Everyone knew that. The Trump administration tried to lie to us and say they're not taxes. The Trump administration wants the phrase, piss on your leg and tell you it's raining, right? It's not a tax. It is a tax. Every economist agrees it's a tax. Every lawyer agrees it's a tax. So the Supreme Court step in and say, well, the taxing and spending clause says only Congress gets to lay and impose taxes, excises, imposts, and duties. And they strike down 6-3, not even close. In February, the IEEPA used by Donald Trump and say you need to refund the tariffs. By the way, the refunds begin next week, and 75,000 businesses have asked for refunds, which is weird because I was told China's paying the tariffs. But anyways, on the specific legal part of this is really interesting because Donald Trump used the IEEPA, which is an act from the 1970s, 1977, which you can use in an economic emergency. Trump claimed the emergency was fentanyl and migration and trade deficits. He claimed there was a national emergency because we have a trade deficit. Okay. And then, here's the best part. He uses the act to go after his enemies, like he always does. Like he goes after his political enemies, he goes after his international enemies. He uses the act completely illegally, as the Supreme Court pointed out, to basically settle scores. And we know this. How do we know this? Because Trump said so. When the Swiss president called him up to negotiate a reduced tariff, he raised the tariff and said, I did it because she rubbed me up the wrong way. She was annoying. She was aggressive. So he raised the taxes. The Brazilians prosecuted Jair Bolsonaro. Good for them. I wish we had done it to Trump. Trump got mad and raised tariffs on American consumers to punish Brazil. That's what the founders envisaged. That's what the founders thought they were doing when we were getting away from Mad King George, from my old country. Was that what they were doing? Giving the president the right to tax Americans because he gets pissed off by a European leader or a South American government? Of course it's an abuse of power. Of course it's completely unconstitutional. Of course it goes against the vision of the founders. That is very, very clear. I'm reminded of a meme that I see sometimes in Catholic circles. There's a meme of a guy goes into the confessional box. He says, "Father, I like to hop on one leg while eating a piece of pizza and honking my nose." And the priest says, "My son, that is very weird, but it is not a sin." And that's the example that Mehdi seems to be giving here. He says, "I really hate what Trump did on these tariffs." But one of the mechanisms by which Trump implemented the tariffs, the Supreme Court rejected, and the administration, being very well within the constitutional mainstream, accepted that and then attempted to use other statutes to implement some other tariffs. But nevertheless, they accepted the Supreme Court's rulings, as they generally do. And so you might say I hate tariffs. You might say I don't like the way President Trump conducts diplomacy. I'm speaking to a group of Ivy League students, obviously. Probably many of you think that. But there is nowhere that I see that to be unconstitutional. I mean, for goodness sakes, the Republican Party was founded on tariffs. Abraham Lincoln famously said, "Give me a tariff and I'll give you the best country in the world." And the Republican Party was pro-tariff through the early 20th century. It flipped a little bit in the mid to late 20th century, and now we seem to like tariffs again. Presidents of both parties levy tariffs through a variety of mechanisms. You can say it's bad economic policy, but there's certainly nothing unconstitutional about it. To Mehdi's point that the companies are eating the cost of the tariffs in many cases, that is true. I know this because I own a company called Mayflower Cigars, which makes great cigars, and I highly recommend them. But we did eat the cost of a lot of, thank you very much. We did eat the cost of a lot of the tariffs, that's true. And I do wonder if, as a political tactic, the refunds for those tariffs that are forthcoming might actually help juice the economy before the midterms. So in a way, it's probably a good political tactic. But I've yet to see some argument that the tariffs would have been unconstitutional. You know, the point that we've observed here is that the Supreme Court struck them down under the basis of a national emergency, and the Trump White House complied. So what are we even arguing here? So, Michael, since you were the one who introduced the word dishonest tactic, let me say back to you, I think you're engaged in dishonest tactic tonight by avoiding the substance of argument every time. It's not whether there's a genocide in Nigeria. The issue is, did Donald Trump have the constitutional power to bomb Nigeria? No. It's not whether tariffs are good or bad. That's irrelevant to this debate. Of course, tariffs are totally fine if Congress imposed them, not Donald Trump because he didn't like the female leader of Switzerland and how she spoke to him on the phone. That is the
this is the progressive side of like Trump derangement syndrome. Like these guys are just like so heavily fixated on like everything Trump does could be bad. I don't think they've praised him for anything he's done good. They've never praised him for anything that he's done good. And look, I criticized him for this war of choice with Iran. Don't get me wrong, I've heavily criticized him for that. But at the same time, my only issue with the tariffs are he took them back. And then the Supreme Court ruled against them, saying that they were unconstitutional. And now basically we have to pay everyone back for all the damage done by these tariffs. That was my only gripe with this. The Supreme Court is trying to undermine the successiveness of these tariffs and their clear objective goals. And they did so. So now we don't have any tariffs. And now we're just pretty much just like left just holding our pretty much our junks out. Just like left holding our dicks out, pause. So there is like no objective win in this regard. So that's my only problem with the tariffs is that he chickened out on a lot of these tariffs, especially the one on China. And now the Supreme Court has ruled against him, and now these tariffs are null and void. So that's my only issue. That's my only gripe with it, because like I do want to be a means of production country again. I do want to build stuff in the United States again. You know, opens up more jobs, more opportunities for young men growing up to go and get a affordable job to create something that's going to better serve the American people, and also, most importantly, give this man an opportunity to take care of his family. But again, like I said before, we don't have that option no more because we've decided to let all our production companies go overseas. And basically fuck the American people over and say fuck us. Like we can't create our own anything. No, which is unfair. But again, like I said, life's never not fair.
Key question that we're debating today. At every instance, every question that Ella's asked, every topic we've covered, I pointed out that what he's doing is going against the Constitution, going against the Supreme Court, going against Trump-appointed judges, going against precedents that you like to cite, and you're dodging it. And you're saying things about, well, tariffs are part of our history. Okay, great. This is not about tariffs. It's about what Donald Trump did with tariffs. He took a power from the Constitution, the Taxing and Spending Clause, Article 1, Section 8, only Congress shall have the power to lay or collect taxes, duties, imposts, excises, and he arrogated it to himself because he believes there are no checks on his power. He's on the record. He said in 2019, I have an Article 2 power to do whatever I want as president. That is not what Article 2 says. He does not have the power to do whatever he wants. The Founding Fathers did not create America so that they could have another monarch, another king, another dictator, but no one seems to have given that memo to Donald Trump. And when he lost at the Supreme Court, Michael said he accepted the decision. Again, dishonest. He actually said that the judges were fools and lapdogs. He said Amy Coney Barrett and Neil Gorsuch embarrassed themselves in front of their families. And he also said that the Supreme Court justices are weak, stupid, and bad. Again, point to me a president who said stuff like that in the modern era.
All right, well, this is unfortunately our last moderated question before we go to audience Q&A, and I would like to bring it back closer to home. You've both experienced elite higher education, except I would argue your father, Dartmouth, experienced the best higher education. And I'm sure you have seen the recent changes in dynamics between U.S. universities and the federal government. As debates over free speech and ideological diversity intensify on campuses, what role, if any, should the federal government play in ensuring viewpoint diversity? And what would that role look like within constitutional limits? I believe you started last time, so we'll go over to you.
Yes, I actually don't love viewpoint diversity. I don't really care for it at all. I know that puts me outside the right-wing mainstream, but I'm perfectly fine with institutions having beliefs and standards and norms, and I think societies ought to have that. Even the notion of protecting viewpoint diversity is relatively recent, comes from the mid-90s in our jurisprudence. But regardless, I'm all for reforming the universities, which are failing in their chief missions. So I suppose the question is President Trump suppressing the First Amendment? And I know that my opponent here on stage made a bold prediction, a promise really, in March of 2024. He said that if President Trump were to be elected again, the stakes for the media were very, very high. What would happen to the free press under President Trump? You know, he's already threatening to do it. Last I checked, unfortunately, the New York Times and the CNN still get to publish. MSNBC has sort of gone downhill, but that's mostly because NBC didn't want to deal with them anymore. There's been really no threat to free speech whatsoever under President Trump. His critics are allowed to threaten to kill him. I mean, in the case of Hasan Piker, one of the chief critics of President Trump and one of the people who's instigated violence was exalted by the New York Times just last week after 3 assassination attempts. So I wish that, frankly, there were more limits on speech under Trump, but there certainly is not. And then when you look at constitutional precedent, we of course have to remember that our second president of the United States, John Adams, passed the Alien and Sedition Acts, much of which remains on the books today. Under Woodrow Wilson, Democrat president, he imprisoned his political rival Eugene Debs, the leader of the Socialist Party, but that act has been used to prosecute people for speech for many, many years, including the socialist journalist, the head of the Jehovah's Witnesses, the leaker of the Pentagon Papers, and Bradley Manning, even under Barack Obama. So we've seen a lot of curtailment of speech. I think a lot of that is within the confines of the First Amendment, and I wish that President Trump would tighten it up a little bit, especially when it comes to those left-wing universities that receive federal dollars.
He may not be directly trying to affect freedom of speech, but here's one caveat that Michael Knowles is not bringing up. There have been many indications of like their legislative trying to be introduced to basically outlaw criticisms of like Israel or Jewish people in general, basically anti-Semitism bills that have been tried to be introduced, which have not passed as of yet at the moment, but that these are a clear indication of like an attack on the First Amendment. There have been multiple bills being introduced trying to target anyone that criticizes not only Israel, but Jewish people in general. So maybe not directly targeted free speech, but indirectly they've tried to introduce legislative that has never really passed at all, because like that defeats the purpose of what we stand for as a country, as a nation. You know, freedom of expression, freedom of speech. So they have tried to do so. They have tried to undermine what America really represents, just to push, just to basically push legislative to bar anyone from criticizing one group that says all the time that they don't have influence at all in America. But I just seen a couple of minutes ago before I came on stream, they're having a literal Israeli parade right now. I forgot where in the United States. Why is it that we're having a parade for a country that's not our own? Like I said before, if people want to keeps telling you right now that Israel does not control our politics, our politicians, our entire way of life here in America, there's so many indications you can look for it. Literally, go look up the Israeli lobby, read the book. Great, insightful book. It gives you a deeper understanding of exactly how far this power really goes. There's multiple lobbying groups, but the Israeli lobby is the worst lobby because there's multiple ways how they donate to politicians besides just through like AIPAC. They have also like donors as well, super PACs, other ones besides, you know, AIPAC, which is the main one. They have other Jewish like PACs. You know, J Street's also pro. Many people will sit up here and says, well, J Street's not pro the Likud party, but they're still a pro Israeli left wing, where progressive super PAC. So keep that in mind.
And certainly don't need to. That is an amazing answer, Michael. Both to deny that there's an assault on the free press and to say you wish that there was a bit more of an assault on the free press. Let's just be very clear. Let's just be very clear about where the facts are on this. Michael thinks everything's fine. Okay. Donald Trump has arrested Don Lemon. He's raided the home of a Washington Post reporter.
So what?
He has blocked the AP from the Oval Office. He tried to defund NPR and PBS. The judge shot it down. He's tried to ban flag burning, which goes against Supreme Court case Texas versus Johnson from 1989. He's tried to get a late night comedian fired because he didn't like his jokes. He has just go down the list when it comes to free press. They tried to restrict reporters reporting at the Pentagon. A judge shot that down too, saying you're not supposed to prescribe the press. He has threatened the New York Times just the other day. He said they should be guilty of sedition because they reported on his Iran war in a way he did not like. He has engaged in multiple lawsuits to try to intimidate and suppress the press. His defense secretary bragged loudly that CNN will be coming under new pro-Trump ownership. Just go down the list. Students. We talk about universities. We've seen students arrested for their speech, not for violence, for their speech. A Reagan-appointed judge said the arrest of students like Mahmoud Khalil and Rumeysa Ozturk was a full-throated assault on the First Amendment. A Reagan-appointed judge, William Young, said that, not some liberal Marxist. And as for threatening people's speech, just the other day, just a few months ago, Donald Trump threatened 6 members of Congress with death for their speech. He said seditious behavior, punishable by death. What did they do? They did a video saying, hey, military, don't follow illegal orders. He said, you should...
Yeah, that was kind of a loaded statement. He said, okay, so back in the day, if many people would actually read history, you know how countries would punish traitors to their civilization? They put them to death. So when he says that, I don't think he's calling for their death. He's basically, in essence, just basically saying a old saying that goes that traitors are put to death for treasonous behavior. Now, of course, people are sit up here and spinning off in any other way they want it, whatever. He's not directly calling that they just need to be killed. He just says like this old cliche saying that traitors are put to death for being treasonous to their country, which I agree with that statement. But the only thing is, we don't do that with none of these Israel first politicians that clearly have the best interest of a foreign nation than they do the American empire. So it's a double standard to that saying, pretty much, because like they adhere to when it comes to like the left leaning Marxist types, but when it comes to like these religious zealot Israel first types, nothing at all.
Be killed for that. This is the most anti-free speech, anti-free press, anti-viewpoint diversity administration in American history. It's led by a complete snowflake who can't tolerate any criticism from anyone, can't tolerate jokes from late-night comedians. Think about the countries where comedians are taken off the airwaves because the leader didn't like their jokes. Are those constitutional democracies? Are those constitutional republics? Are those democracies that we think Americans have? Think about that when you vote tonight. Think about the kind of place where the president threatens students, threatens media organizations, threatens comedians, and threatens members of the other party while arresting journalists. The whole thing is absurd to suggest he's not anti-First Amendment president. It's actually at the core of my argument for why he's not upholding the Constitution, because he's not upholding the First Amendment.
I think it's very telling that my opponent objects to the arrest of Don Lemon, which was not, in fact, for free speech, but was because Don Lemon violated federal law and bragged about it on camera. Excuse me, and violated federal law and bragged about it on camera. If you'll allow me to finish, I'm trying to engage in my free speech, and there seems to be a heckler's veto.
My free speech too.
That's pretty good.
He violated the Federal Law Act. He walked in with an unruly mob to disrupt a religious proceeding. This terrorized children. He did all sorts of terrible things. Targeted Christians. No surprise that would be given a pass from the man who denied the genocide of Christians in Nigeria tonight. Noticing a touch of a trend, but to bring us back to the point, the defunding of PBS is somehow a violation of the First Amendment. I thought that the president and the Congress had the right to take care to make sure that the laws are effective and executed, and also Congress has the power of the purse. I didn't know PBS and Big Bird were in the First Amendment to the Constitution. That would be news to James Madison. When it comes to the curtailment of reporters, no one has been more transparent than President Trump. He answers the phone when CNN journalists call him. I would never do any such thing, but the president does that. He has open gaggles, very contrary to his immediate predecessor, Joe Biden. And so, yet again, President Trump has exalted the First Amendment. In fact, he has embraced a free speech. He has embraced a free speech absolutist position, even when it comes to flag burning. I'll just finish up on this point. Mehdi Hasan points out that the flag burning was ruled a constitutionally protected right in 1989. Curious that it wasn't 1889 or 1789. It's a live question debated in American jurisprudence. President Trump has issued an executive order to bring that challenge back to the court, as he should, and we'll all be debating it along the way because President Trump loves free speech.
All right, well, we're going to pivot to audience Q&A. We'll have 2 mic runners, one on either aisle. I will call on 3 people to go to each mic runner, so 6 in total. I'll do you, blue shirt, another blue shirt, there's a lot of blue shirts, a white shirt, blue shirt, red shirt, and then green shirt. So 3 over there and 3 over there. Perfect. If we have more time, we will take more student questions. Great. nature.
Yeah, so thank you guys so much for coming today. A lot of the conversation circulated particularly around Trump's second term activities. I was just curious to the question of not whether Trump upheld the Constitution with regards to January 6th, but did he uphold constitutional norms?
Great question. Is that for any one of us in particular?
Particularly you, Michael, but either of you could go at it.
Answer after Michael? Sure,
yeah. 2 minutes and 2 minutes.
Yeah, sure thing. Yes, he did. Again, I'm not convincing anyone that they should love the horn hat guy. That's not the basis on which you're voting this evening. But there is a great precedent for contested elections in the United States. In fact, that's what the 12th Amendment is about. We've had a number of contested elections. Obviously, 1860, the election of Lincoln, the Rutherford v. Hayes, which resulted in the Compromise of 1876. Bush v. Gore, Al Gore refused to concede for months after that, and there were some riotous events. So what occurred at the Capitol on January 6th is very unfortunate. That's been much lied about. It's worth pointing out that the only person who was killed in political violence that day was a Trump supporter who was killed by a trigger-happy cop. And there's also a special irony to Democrats complaining about January 6th as the worst day in the history of this or any republic, because not only was it not the worst political violence in American history, it wasn't the worst political violence of that year. It followed the little-prosecuted BLM riots that very same year, where Kamala Harris and staffers for Joe Biden actually bailed the rioters out of jail. But there's a greater irony, which is that there have been 5 or 6, depending on how you score it, attacks on the Capitol in American history. Virtually all of them have been perpetrated by radical leftists, a Marxist Harvard professor, Harvardman, of course. But then one in 1971 was perpetrated by Bill Ayers of the Weather Underground. Bill Ayers, in whose living room Barack Obama launched his political career. So it's very unfortunate that took place on January 6th. It's unfortunate that there were questions about the 2020 election, questions which arose because the election rules were radically changed in weeks and months before the election, in some cases unconstitutionally, as in the case of mail-in ballots in Pennsylvania. It's also a bit strange that Nancy Pelosi took responsibility for not having sufficient security at the Capitol that day. She did that on camera. It was actually a film that her daughter made. You can easily go look it up. And it's very strange that some of the Capitol Police gave the leaders of the insurrection private tours of the Capitol, notably the aforementioned horn hat guy. But regardless, it's a great pity that it took place. I hope it doesn't take place again. And unfortunately, it's also not totally out of the norm for the United States, going back at least to the middle of the 19th century. So glad you asked that question, because January 6th hadn't come up, and it was a big issue from Trump's end of his first term. Mike Pence, we talked about Mike Pence. Why does Mike Pence keep coming up? Because you're a fan of his, and he was the vice president who didn't endorse the president for another term because he said he made me do unconstitutional stuff. He wanted me to violate my constitutional oath. That's from Mike Pence's testimony. You want to dismiss it because you know there's comeback for it. You cite Al Gore. Al Gore never incited an insurrection. There is no precedent for January 6th. We were used to peaceful transfers of power. Richard Nixon agreed, even though he's probably robbed by JFK. Al Gore agreed, even though he's probably robbed by George W. Bush. Donald Trump actually lost, for sure, and he still didn't accept it and incited a riot. Michael says, oh, Democrats
yeah, sure he did.
history. Do you know who said, bar none, it was the most horrifying day in American politics in my lifetime? Mike Pence. No. I don't know. You're guessing him, so I guess. Guess again. It was Ben Shapiro on January the 7th. He said it was the most horrifying day that I witnessed in American politics. A noted Democrat, Ben Shapiro, said that on January the 7th. So let's just deal with some facts here. The people who attacked the Capitol were not going on private tours. They were not just a horn hat guy. It was people like Daniel Rodriguez, who assaulted Michael Fanone, put him in a stroke, got 12 years in prison. The judge said he was an army of hate and violence. Donald Trump pardoned him. It was people like Andrew Paul Johnson, who was just sentenced to life in prison for sexually abusing 2 children in Florida. Donald Trump pardoned him for January the 6th. He pardoned a neo-Nazi called Bradley Tyler Dykes, who did a sea tile salute as he attacked police officers. These are the people Trump pardoned. Michael has never condemned Trump for that. Harry Sisson asked Michael on his show earlier this year, would you condemn Donald Trump for doing that? And he wouldn't answer the question. So I'll never condemn Donald Trump. Do you condemn Donald Trump for pardoning?
You know something funny? Like, their side will sit up here, they're sit up here and like pretty much like use this moral fact type of like moral high ground stance against the right wing, but literally they condemn their own, like Harry Sisson, for example, because I just thought about this, just came into my head. He got condemned by his side for just being a player. Like, his side literally canceled him for being a player. Like, they're set up here and could cancel a guy just for doing like a Hail Hitler Nazi salute, but they cancel guys just for something as like simple as like him being a player. I'll never understand that. I would never understand that. Like, their side will sit up here and call for the cancellation of like their own side just for something as simple as like them just like wanting to get laid and actually being straight men. But no. We champion gay people. We champion minorities. We champion illegal immigrants. We champion open borders. You know, we champion all these things right now that are antithetical to what conservatism is. You know, we're anti-conservative. We are pro everything that they are, the opposite of everything that they are. No, their side has literally caused reparable damage because of BLM, but they don't condemn that at all. None of them. I've never heard any of these guys, especially Mehdi Hasan, even condemn the riots that took place after George Floyd died of fentanyl. But they're sit up here and tell us to go ahead and condemn January 6th all the fucking time. And then all the people that he pardoned or whatever, they went in their history to find out, oh, he pardoned this guy, he pardoned that guy. They did deep dives researching in this, but I guarantee you, majority of everyone that was involved in the Black Lives Matter organization literally stole money from their own people to buy lavish mansions, you know, nice cars, nice shoes, nice clothes. And yet they don't even talk about that at all. They actually just swept that underneath the rug. It's always this moral fagging from the left. It's always that moral fagging stuff, bro. It's insane to me.
Neo-Nazis, domestic abusers, pedophiles.
Well, hold on. Was he one?
Do you condemn Trump?
I'm just asking a clarifying question about that guy. Was he one of the neo-Nazis who was getting $3 million from the SPLC, or was he a different neo-Nazi?
Nice diversion. Do you?
True.
I'm not Harry Sisson. I'll use up my time. Do you condemn Donald Trump for pardoning neo-Nazis, violent criminals, people who assaulted 140 police officers on January 6th?
One last real clarification. One last real clarification.
I'll ask again. Do you? No, simple question. Do you support pardoning the 600 people who were charged with assaulting police officers?
Pardon them for
He pardoned them for assaulting police. Do you support that? All right. Do you support that?
All right.
How many times
You're going to stick to the 2 minutes, 2 minute one.
Do you condemn Donald Trump for pardoning 600 people who assaulted police officers? Fourth time. Can you do it?
I'm happy to. I condemn pedophilia, neo-Nazism. I condemn, and I condemn.
He won't do it. He will not like it.
Excuse me, we have a debate format. We're going to stick to the debate format. We're not going to have...
Mehdi doesn't want to stick to the debate.
We're going to stick to the debate format.
You don't want to answer the question.
I'm happy to answer on the substance.
If you would like to, you have 1 minute to respond to everything.
So obviously, Mehdi's being very, very dishonest. President Trump didn't pardon anybody for pedophilia or Nazism or whatever nonsense. If you'll allow me to finish. So what he pardoned them for is because there was a massive prosecution of thousands of people on January 6th that was politically motivated, that was disproportionate because the federal government had let all of the leftist rioters who, unlike the January 6thers, killed dozens of people and it resulted in over $1 billion worth of property damage, let them off the hook and in fact raised money to bail them out of jail. And so because of the unjust prosecutions where you had Midwestern grannies who were not pedophiles or Nazis but who were eccentric ladies who walked around the Capitol despite all of the lies suggesting police officers were killed. If that was not true, the coroners proved that. So he recognized that there was disproportionate prosecution. The same goes for the pro-life grannies who were arrested by Joe Biden, who were in prison for praying at abortion clinics. President Trump pardoned them. Now on the pardon power, there are lots of bad pardons that go on. Joe Biden took it to an egregious degree, but the pardon power is absolute. And if we're here to defend the Constitution, we would have to defend the plain words of Article 2, which say the president has the pardon power.
Okay, thank you both. I appreciate the sentiments. We're going to keep interruptions to a minimum.
Why, yeah. To be fair, it wasn't an interruption. I gave up my time to ask a question. He didn't answer it 6 times.
Okay, first off, Mehdi, big fan. I love your work. To Michael, I would like to say, so there's a new, I think with your assault on free speech and how we should, in your words, tighten, there's a new act proposed by Congress, the Mamdani Act. Are you familiar with that?
I'm not, but I like it.
So it is the Measures Against Marxism's Defenders and Noxious Islamists Act. And it essentially extends the power of the federal government, especially by Trump, to deny citizenship, to deny entry, and to essentially deport, to go to these ICE, horrible camps, any person who is a radical Islamist or a communist or any other sort of leftist. It gives very broad powers. Do you support that? And is that constitutional at all?
Well, I love the acronym, and I take it from your description of the act when you mentioned that this would be a way to deport people, to deny them visas, to deny them entry to schools. Or the people we're talking about here are not American citizens. So it's.
Sorry, I'm getting text messages like crazy. Anyways, damn. Like, yeah, I love it how they expect us to sit there and condemn all the other stuff. Trump didn't pardon them for them being Nazis. They didn't pardon them for being pedophiles or whatever. Obviously, no one on the right's okay with none of that stuff. Okay, no one's okay with that stuff. And Nazism is dead, bro. Like the progressives love talking about Nazism, bro. Nazism died after World War II. What you're seeing right now with these little neo-Nazi groups or whatever, these people are LARPers, bro. They're not real Nazis, bro. They're just people that play dress up all fucking day. Obviously, no one condones pedophilia or whatever, but I feel like the progressive side is just like they're having a case of like pedophilia hysteria. They're so heavily fixated on it. Because of the Epstein files, which they never cared for on the Biden at all. Many of them didn't even call for transparency during the Biden administration, not even during Trump's first term, not even during all the way back during George Bush's term or Obama's. So all these guys, like, they literally love to do this moral signaling stuff towards the right. Just basically to have like this moral high ground on us as they're the most superior righteous side, but in essence they hide how they're the bigger bigots than we are. You ever notice that? Like, yeah, you know something funny? What I always get from leftists, they always sit there and bring up the color of my skin far more than anyone on the right will. On the right, I'd never even hear that. We don't talk about race at all. But it's always like the liberals or whatever that like always break up the fact that, oh, the color of your skin is going to get you arrested according to Trump's administration or whatever. Oh, they're going to deport you because they go think you're a legal immigrant because they're discriminating based off of race, even though technically speaking, majority of the illegal immigrants that came in the country are brown, you know, African. You know, they all came from all over the world. I mean, my family's been here for generations. And yeah, if they have to like withhold me because this is the first time they've done interior immigration at the degree, and they have to make sure exactly that the person they're detaining is the right person up for deportations. Yeah, they're going to make mistakes here and there. That just happens. But these people are constantly looking for a reason to basically demonize the Trump administration. And they demonize Trump themselves. This is why they coined token word Trump derangement syndrome has stuck on so well, because these people are deranged about Trump and everything that he does. So that is just a fact.
It's really crucial to recognize here a point that has been glossed over, which is that when Mehdi Hasan says that the Trump administration is arresting students for stating their opinions, even if they're radical left-wing opinions, he's not arresting American citizens. What the Secretary of State came out and said is that they are going to revoke or deny visas to people who have views that are contrary to the American national interest, which is not only entirely constitutional, that is just plain common sense. You don't want to bring in foreigners who have no right to be in your country, who actively undermine your society. I mean, that's the most basic charge of immigration. So, and then to your point, you say, we're going to even deport some people. Well, to deport those people implies that they have no right to be here. That is, they're not American citizens. And in that case, yes, I favor deportations quite broadly, and the fact that it has that beautiful acronym is a cherry on top. I am calling, with very little knowledge beyond what you've just suggested about the act, I am calling on Congress today to pass it, pass it twice.
Can I respond? Yeah, it's interesting that Michael again says, Mehdi Hasan thinks foreign students having their rights deprived. No, William Young, a veteran Reagan judge, said it was a full-throated assault on the First Amendment. He said, I'm going to answer the constitutional question posed here, which is, do legal immigrants have the same constitutional rights to free speech as citizens? Yes, they do, he said. These are his words. Yes, they do. There is no invidious distinction that Trump makes. His words, jurisprudence, history does not back that. In fact, go back to 1945, Bridges versus Wixon, famous Supreme Court case where they said, immigrants here in the country have the same First Amendment rights as everyone else. And these are not students who are...
Here's a better question to ask. Do we care? No, we do not. Okay, they can have their rights or whatever. They're still in the country illegally and they're up for deportations. No one cares if they have the right to anything. Their right is to go back home to their country. That's their right.
You know, trying to undermine America. Rumeysa Öztürk is a student from Turkey who wrote an op-ed in a newspaper saying, I think my university should divest from Israel. That's what she wrote. Said nothing about the United States of America. Said nothing violent. Masked men grabbed her off the street. Have you seen the video? It's one of the creepiest things you will ever see. A bunch of masked men with no IDs grabbed this young woman off the street and they imprisoned her. And Michael says, it's totally constitutional. Actually, the law that Rubio is citing, it's 1952 Law of Obscure Amendment. Do you know who said it was unconstitutional? A woman called Judge Marion Trump Barry. Donald Trump's late sister is the only judge to ever adjudicate on this. And she said, I think it's unconstitutional. Never reached the Supreme Court. But it's the only time an American judge has looked at it and they think what Marco Rubio is doing. Trump's late sister thinks it's unconstitutional. A Reagan judge thinks it's an assault on the First Amendment. So let's not stop pretending this is about the left and about Muslims and about socialists. No, it's not. I've already pointed out, Mike Pence disagrees with you, Ben Shapiro disagrees with you, Reagan judges disagree with you, Trump judges disagree with you, the Supreme Court disagrees with you, and I hope the audience tonight disagrees with you.
Please respond.
Yeah, maybe Mike Pence should have come here tonight. I don't know. Why am I... Just to clarify, like, I like Mike Pence as much as the next guy, but I'm not like... He's not my bosom buddy. I don't know. We don't sit up text. I don't know why Mehdi...
He was only the vice president for 4 years.
Mehdi keeps bringing
Donald Trump.
But anyway, I guess the question I would ask for Mehdi, and just as you offered me some of your time, I'll ask you this. Do you think that foreign students who would apply for a student visa to the United States, do you think that they have some right to that visa?
No, I don't think they have the right to the visa. But I agree.
That's the question.
But I agree. No, it's not the question. No, it's not.
Reclaiming my time.
No, it's not. We're not in Congress. I'm answering the question. No, it's not a right to have a visa, but it is right to have free speech once you're in the country under the First Amendment, per Justice Murphy's ruling in Bridges versus Wixon, 1945. Once you're in the country, you have the same rights.
You're taking up all my time because you're filibustering. We're not.
As you did. I answered your question.
We're not talking about.
Do you support Donald Trump's pardoning of violent offenders? 7 times.
We will reset your time.
Yeah, good.
You can start from the beginning.
I appreciate that. This is why, just to loop back a little bit, this is why it's so funny that Mehdi Hasan takes issue with the arrest of Don Lemon, because Don Lemon was arrested claiming First Amendment rights, but you don't have a First Amendment right when you were actively violating the First Amendment rights of others, which is something that Mehdi is clearly very familiar with. And Mehdi has just admitted the point. And he keeps dishonestly trying to conflate legal immigrants in the United States with students who are here on visas from some foreign country. But he's already granted the premise, and he's granted the point, which is that the students do not have a right, a constitutional right.
Put words in my mouth. Yes, they do.
I'm not putting words in your mouth. I'm telling the truth to the students. A foreign student who would like to study in the United States, at Dartmouth or elsewhere, has no right to do so. No natural right, no constitutional right, no legal right to that visa. That visa is a privilege granted to the United States. Mehdi and others might want to blow open our borders and tell everyone around the world that they're permitted to come here. You already granted the point, Mehdi, that a foreign student who wishes to come here does not have a right to that.
Once they have First Amendment rights, which you keep ignoring because the Supreme Court is against you, Michael, as it has been all night.
All right, thank you for your time. In the interest of time, we're going to move on to the next question.
Hello. I have one main question, but I think that it lends to a lot of what this argument has been about, and I think a lot of where the argument has gone instead of maybe where it should have been. I've been really interested, and I'm curious to know, because, Mehdi, as you pointed out, there are some moments where the argument has moved as opposed to, does the president have the right? Is it constitutional that the president, say, take Nigeria, for example, did he have the right to strike Nigeria? Instead, the question has become, is there a genocide in Nigeria? Should the president have, stricken Nigeria? I'm curious to know whether or not it is constitutional. If there is a matter, say in Nigeria or elsewhere, where the president might personally view there to be some kind of situation, do you believe that the president does have the right, or in some cases should, in your personal opinion, violate the Constitution? Do you believe that there are moments where the president has that right or should? And following that, what is the point of the Constitution if you believe that the president should or has the right to violate it?
Was that question for me or Mehdi?
Mainly for you, but
okay.
I would also...
Yeah, sure. Well, I suppose I just disagree with the premise, the suggestion that the president taking military action around the world violates the Constitution. It does not. In the case of an intervention in Nigeria, one could make an argument that it pertains to American interests because we're the global empire and we have interests around the world. But one could also just make that it's a humanitarian intervention. And indeed, that was much of the argument that presidents have made for many decades now. Barack Obama made it, Bill Clinton made it. And furthermore, the Monroe Doctrine, which we were discussing earlier in the case of Venezuela, which has been the cornerstone of American foreign policy since the early 19th century, does not have a literal, direct constitutional predicate, and yet no serious person would suggest that it's somehow contrary to the Constitution. So I think it would be contrary to the Constitution if the president went toppled the regime in Nigeria and made it the 51st state, which I don't think any of us want to do, or if the military action went on for more than 60 or 90 days without authorization from Congress, as we saw in the cases of Barack Obama and Joe Biden. But a relatively minor military action for national interest or even for humanitarian reasons is well within the constitutional mainstream. There's nothing prohibiting the president from doing that, and indeed he has the right to do that as the commander-in-chief of the military. I guess one topic that we haven't really gotten to, but it does sit at the foundation of a lot of the debate tonight, is what the executive really is. And so this gets back to Article 2, Section 1, which in the very first line explains what the executive is. And our framers said that the executive power shall be vested in a president of the United States of America. The courts have ruled on this many times. There are all sorts of interesting discussions about inspectors general and all other branches of government trying to involve themselves in the executive branch. But time and time again, we recognize that the executive has broad authority. And in our day and age, a lot of people are worried about an overreach from the executive. But I don't think that's really serious. First of all, Congress gave away a lot of its authority by establishing the agencies in the executive 100 years ago. But furthermore, if any branch is going to be overstepping, it's probably going to be the judiciary. So he has a constitutional predicate to do it. Again, we can disagree over the prudence of a strike on Nigeria, but that's not the topic on which you're voting tonight. The question is very basic. Is Trump within the constitutional mainstream? And the answer is yes. That's not the question of if he's within the mainstream. It's, is he upholding the Constitution, yes or no, and he's clearly not. What's interesting is Michael again made a weird concession there. He said he hasn't gone over 60 days in the case of Nigeria, but he has in Iran. He has in Iran. He crossed it last Friday. But I know I struggle with British English. You can maybe struggle with math. 60 days was last Friday. We crossed it. Donald Trump wrote a letter saying hostilities are terminated. And then on Monday there was an exchange of fire between America and Iran, which is a reminder of what a liar and a fool he is. So no, he crossed 60 days. It's an illegal war. It was already a illegal war. Now it's a doubly illegal war under the War Powers Act. And Jim, I'm glad you raised the issue of executive power. I'm glad you raised the question of what is the Constitution for. I'm not a blind fan of everything in the Constitution. No one is. And we shouldn't be. There's amendments for a reason. Michael, you want to change the flag burning thing, right? You want an amendment to change it. We don't need an amendment to change it. But you want to get rid of it. I wouldn't mind if there were clarifications. Okay. And many of us on the left would like some reinterpretation of the Second Amendment, some kind of, I think that's fair to say. But the point is, you do it the right way. I'm not saying that I'm not a fan of the Second Amendment. Doesn't mean Joe Biden can come and just strike down the Second Amendment. By the way, Donald Trump came in and said, you can't have guns, he said, after Alex Preddy was killed. Can you imagine what Michael would have said if Joe Biden had said, you can't have guns? By the way, notice that Republicans are always fine with executive power when it's a Republican in the White House. When it's a Democrat in the White House, they're screaming from the hilltops about overreach. Yep. Ted Cruz called Barack Obama a tyrant. Mike Huckabee called him a dictator. Donald Trump said Biden was leading a Gestapo administration. They said Obama did too many executive orders. Biden governed by executive order. Well, Donald Trump has done 100 more executive orders in 18 months than Joe Biden did in 4 years. He's done almost as many executive orders in 18 months as Obama did in 8 years. So this nonsensical position that we're fine with executive power, no, you're not. You're fine with a Republican dictator. You just don't want Democrats to have any power. And I think you should be honest about that. People have more respect for your views on the Constitution if you were consistent and not just a partisan. Well, it's interesting that...
I'm fine with that.
Mehdi brings up President Trump's executive orders, because I seem to recall a journalist by the name of Mehdi Hasan, who in early 2021 was begging on television for Joe Biden to issue many, many more executive orders. Yeah. And I believe this Mr. Hasan was asking him to follow the legacy of Franklin Roosevelt, who issued thousands of executive orders, which were so relentlessly... And your side was attacking Biden for that. That's my point. That you wanted more from him. But Trump has exceeded Biden and Obama. And you were the guy you want more. You're saying, like today you say judges overstepped. But do you want more? In 2022, when a Florida judge shut down the mask mandate, COVID mask mandate, Michael Knowles tweeted, since we're quoting each other, Michael Knowles tweeted in 2022, the hero judge struck down Biden's mask mandate. When you're a Republican judge who strikes down a Democrat's policy, you're a hero. When you're a Republican judge who strikes down a Republican president, as many have, I've named them all tonight, then it's judicial overreach. See the double standard? Yeah, this is once again Michael's time defending the First Amendment yet again. So anyway, to the point I was saying, Mehdi was very, very upset that Joe Biden wasn't issuing more executive orders, and he said he has to follow FDR, who issued thousands, which were so relentless unanimously struck down by the Supreme Court as unconstitutional, that FDR promised to totally reconstitute the court for the first time in 70 years, and only because a judge backed down was that averted. Nevertheless, you make a good point. Yes, Republicans and Democrats are different. Their policies are different. Some are good, some are bad. I want more of the good ones and fewer of the bad ones. But on the issue of executive authority here, there's really no question. You say, I'd like to amend the Constitution. I don't think we really need to. And on this point, on the unitary executive, on the fact that the executive power is vested in the President of the United States, that is clear as day from the Constitution, from now 250 years of jurisprudence, almost 250 years of jurisprudence, and then all the way up to even the post-Watergate reforms, the Inspector General Act, which acknowledges that very fact, and to Supreme Court cases since then. So the executive does have a lot of authority. I don't like it when Democrats win it and affect it, which is why I think we need to win elections.
Thank you for those thoughts. Ready for the next question.
Hi, Michael Mehdi. First of all, I want to say thank you so much for coming up here to Hanover to debate. This question is directed at you, Michael. I wanted to say that as a Republican, I am naturally inclined to agree with you that Donald Trump has acted within constitutional norms, but for his behavior leading up to but not including January 6th. And I wanted to ask you, how do you reconcile his behavior, particularly with regards to trying to influence Brad Raffensperger and secure electors from Georgia with the constitutional separation of powers between the state and federal government, especially with the right of states to conduct their own elections?
Yeah, a really good question, because again, happily, my I hope impending victory in the debate does not rest on what you think of any of these individual actions. It's really just a question of, is Trump upholding the Constitution, and what that even means, which is, of course, how the Constitution is obtained throughout history. And so there was a lot of predicate for this, for contested elections. I guess the first question you have to ask is, was there reason to be a little skeptical of the presidential election in 2020? And I think the fact that they changed all the voter rules and took away a lot of the safeguards, and in some cases violated a state constitution, as we saw in Pennsylvania, and then delayed the counts, and I think there was at least a reasonable person might have some questions about the election. Was this the first time in American history that there were lawsuits over presidential elections? Certainly not. Was this the first time in presidential history that there was a question over who the legitimate electors would be? Certainly not. Indeed, our Constitution preempts that and recognizes that there will be questions. That's the whole point of the 12th Amendment. So again, President Trump's rhetoric was much more moderate, actually, than he's given credit for, even on the day of January 6th himself. Part of the reason that the Democrats kept failing in all of these cases, one, he was obviously exonerated at his impeachment trial over this, but then two, they couldn't kick him off of the ballot when they tried to undermine democracy on this insurrection point. That too was thrown out because he didn't do it. And his words were very clear, which is he said, you should peaceably assemble. This was well within the Brandenburg standard on speech and violence. And so, his actions could be imprudent. His actions, you could say, were reckless. You could say his actions did not have a reasonable probability of success. You could say all of those things, and all of those criticisms are perfectly fine to make. The one thing you can't say is that it's out of the norm for constitutional behavior in the United States. Can you imagine going back to January 6, 2021, and hearing Michael say that? No one in America believed that. The Republican Party didn't believe that. Kevin McCarthy didn't believe that. He said it was an insurrection. What did Mike Pence? Mike Pence. Let's go to Mike Pence. He said, President Trump demanded that I put the Constitution above Donald Trump. He became the first modern vice president not to endorse the president because that's what he thought of as a threat to the Constitution. Ask yourself, who knows Trump better, Michael Knowles or the people who served with him much of his first cabinet who refused to endorse him a second time? His chief of staff, his defense secretary, his national security, fired a lot. His vice president. He also appointed them and said they're amazing when he appointed them. So let's talk about January 6th and the run-up to January 6th. There was a fake elector scheme. Multiple people indicted. Trump's own lawyer was convicted for that. Michael says, well, people, it was thrown out of court. Let's be clear. Donald Trump never saw the inside of a courtroom for his crimes on January 6th because Joe Biden and Merrick Garland were not like Donald Trump and Pam Bondi and didn't go after their political opponents. They were super slow. They dragged their feet. They appointed Jack Smith 600.
Now that's just being dishonest. Yes, they did. Yes, they did. Immediately after he got out of office, he was literally bombarded with lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit. Yes, they did. And they encouraged and arresting Trump, basically putting him in behind bars. Especially after that whole debacle with January 6th, they didn't charge him directly with anything pertaining towards January 6th. No, they got him on like some real estate tax stuff up in New York. That's basically what they got him on. Now he was also being sued and being accused of accused of grape by E. Jean Carroll, but she already ruined her own case by saying grape is not physical. But this whole notion that the left was not targeting Donald Trump and that the left was not targeting their political enemies is just like, it's asinine at best. That is just complete lie. That is a complete lie. Even Mehdi Hasan knows that shit's a lie, bro. And he's up there saying that with a straight face.
67 days after they came to office. Compare that to Donald Trump who's gone after John Brennan and Jim Comey and all the rest, Tish James, all thrown out by judges saying this is ridiculous. This is the difference. But Democrats weaponizing government, some of us say, we wish Trump got away with it because he never saw the inside of a courtroom. Jack Smith had to end all that because Trump got re-elected and DOJ guidelines say you can't indict a sitting president. So we don't know, but we saw the evidence. We know that Trump was lying. Trump knew he was lying. If you and I called Brad Raffensperger and said, find us 11,000 votes, we'd be in prison. Let's just be very clear about that. The only reason he's not is because he's Donald Trump. He committed multiple crimes in the run-up to January 6th. He told his DOJ, he wrote a note to his DOJ, just say it's corrupt, say it's stolen, and me and the Republicans in Congress will deal with it. That's on the record, right? People around him say, we told him it wasn't stolen. He knew it wasn't stolen. Kellyanne Conway has said that. And yet he still did this. He still incited a riot at the Capitol. And 140 police officers were injured. And Michael will not say tonight whether it was wrong of Donald Trump to pardon pardon 600 people who were charged with assault. You talk about grannies.
It's not wrong. I totally support the pardon.
You support pardoning assaulted police officers like Daniel Rodriguez?
I support the pardons for January 6th.
Do you support pardoning Daniel Rodriguez?
I oppose pedophilia. I oppose beating your wife.
What about Daniel Rodriguez? Do you support pardoning Daniel Rodriguez, who assaulted a police officer?
I support pardons for January.
Why do you support pardoning Daniel Rodriguez?
Well, as I explained in my very lengthy answer.
You talked about grannies. I'm talking about a man who was sentenced.
Unfortunately, we have limited time.
I keep coming to rescue you. 8 times I tried.
Yeah, and I answered. I answered you many times.
You have 1 minute.
Thank you very much. I don't know if Mehdi will allow me to have my minute. So Mehdi just said something that yet again
the Q&A. That was before.
The other two can go to you first.
Yes, they have too many questions for me is the problem. So Mehdi just said something yet again that is not true. Mehdi just said that President Trump never saw the inside of a courtroom for his actions on January 6th. Mehdi must be suffering from a little bit of amnesia because last time I checked, President Trump was indeed tried for his supposed crime on January 6th. He was tried in precisely the way a president of the United States is tried. He was impeached for it, and then he was exonerated. He was not convicted for the crime at the Senate trial.
Well, the reason, well, it wasn't directly with January 6th. Yeah, he was impeached. Yeah, don't get me wrong. Because of all that action that happened with January 6th, but it wasn't directly that. Like I was saying, like he directly charged with any form of like insurrection on January 6th? No, he was not. That's what I was referring to, just to clarify that stance. Because, yeah, that was true that he was getting impeached or whatever, but that didn't really lead nowhere.
To your point, once he left office, he was once again prosecuted for this. Jack Smith went after him, as you rightly point out, but you're conflating two cases because then he was, it also went to trial one more time when the states tried to kick him off the ballot for supposedly committing an insurrection. Both of those cases flopped, just like the impeachment flopped where he was exonerated. So 3 times this was brought to courts, one being the special court of the impeachment court. 3 times it was brought to courts, and all 3 times
there was never a trial, Michael. You are lying if you say there was a trial.
Impeachment is a trial.
In Georgia and in Washington, D.C. and in Florida, there were no trials. It is a lie to say there was a trial.
We have time for 2 more audience Q&As. We'll start with Mehdi. I think we're going to start over here.
Awesome. Yeah, and I think we might be nearing 1 question. Yeah, and
Mehdi Saab, it's a privilege to see you speak here in person. My question, given the precedent, very recently Donald Trump posted a picture of himself, an AI-generated picture of himself depicting himself as Jesus. Yes. My question to Michael, first, given the Senate Judiciary hearing recently, do you believe that Donald Trump can run as for a 3rd term and be elected as president, yes or no, given the 22nd Amendment? And the response I'd love from Mehdi is, what would bypassing said amendment look like, given the precedent set? What would bypassing said amendment look like, given the precedent set by this administration?
And sorry, just before you guys answer, can we also have people fill out the post-debate poll as we talk to debate the winner? Thanks so much.
My greatest fear is 22nd Amendment violation. I've said that for a while. I'm on record. I'm not saying Donald Trump will do that. I don't do predictions anymore. I said he wouldn't win in 2016. I was wrong. I don't do political predictions. But that's my greatest fear. Is it a possibility that he'll do it? Sure, I take him literally. I take him seriously. He said it just again on Monday. Oh, he's just joking, they say. And then he goes on Meet the Press. He says, I'm not joking. There are ways to do it. There are ways to do it.
This is how scary.
We're working on a way to do it. Look, this is my big fear.
These people are already stupid, bro.
Judge Michael Ludi, one of the most conservative judges in America. He's a wannabe tyrannical king. He wants to stay in power. He thinks he is God's gift. He literally, Michael earlier, very shamefully, tried to insinuate I'm anti-Christian because I don't accept there's a Christian genocide in Nigeria. And yet he supports a man who literally portrayed himself as Jesus. Blasphemously, sacrilegiously. A man who attacks the Pope. Michael, are you Catholic?
I am.
Yeah, a man who attacks the Pope. I've never attacked the Pope like Donald Trump has, but such is partisanship, a hell of a drug, as they say, that he won't criticize Donald Trump ever for attacking the Pope, but he'll attack me for supposedly being anti-Christian. Trump literally portrayed himself as Jesus, then pretended, said, I thought I was being a doctor. Okay, biggest liar in the world. Attacked the Pope, lied about the Pope. You know what he said on Monday? He said the Pope says he wants Iran to have a nuclear weapon. I wonder, will Michael condemn Trump for lying about the Pope? The Pope has never said Iran wants to have a nuclear weapon. Donald Trump lied on Monday. You can see if Michael will answer that question tonight. I suspect he won't. Cult, he can't criticize the dear leader. So it's a real problem that we have a president who's attacking Christianity because he sees himself as Lord God. He once said, and he once retweeted someone saying he's the king of the Jews, the Lord of the world, whatever it was. He's putting out pictures of himself as Jesus. And yes, the 22nd Amendment's an issue. A man who did not accept a peaceful transfer of power in January 2021. Why would he accept it in 2028? Every time he's ever lost an election, he claims fraud. When he lost to Michael's good friend Ted Cruz in the Iowa caucuses in 2016, he said Ted Cruz stole it. He accuses everyone. I don't know what happened in his childhood, but he really cannot handle any kind of defeat. He's a malignant narcissist. He's power crazy. And yes, there is a very real risk that just as in 2021, he tries to stay on in office in 2028. The fact that we're even having this conversation is a reason why you should vote against this motion and say he's not upholding the Constitution, because he's considering violating the 22nd Amendment. That in itself should be enough for Michael to lose this debate.
I'm trying to track what the question was, because Mehdi took us on a journey. It involved the Pope, it involved me.
The question had Christianity and 22nd Amendment.
22nd Amendment.
Both was in the question. I know you don't want to talk about the Pope.
I was very glad when the president took down the image. Mehdi, being a little confused about things tonight, seems to think I won't criticize the president. I did specifically point out that was a sacrilegious post.
That's what I asked. Did he lie about the Pope's
Can I ever have my time to answer? Are you afraid that I'm going to speak?
No, you didn't answer my question. Did he lie about the Pope?
I'm answering his question.
Wants nuclear weapons?
I'm not answering your question. I'm answering his question.
You won't criticize Trump for that.
So anyway, as I just pointed out, I very publicly criticized President Trump over that post and was actually featured in the international media for it. And very happily, President Trump took down the post. I was very glad with that. He's also moderated his comments on the Pope, which I think is the right thing to do. No emperors. May I speak ever in this debate, Mr. Hasan?
You've actually spoken more of it.
It's unbelievable. So anyway, there have been many tensions between emperors and popes going back to at least Pope Gelasius the First in the 5th century. So I'm not surprised that the president's fighting with them a little bit. And I think the president's Presbyterian. Maybe we'll make him Catholic by the end. To the actual question that was asked before Mehdi's very rude interruption, the question was, will President Trump violate the 22nd Amendment? And Mehdi, who's made many very false predictions, including that the free press would disappear were Trump reelected, Mehdi says that he won't leave office. And I'd just like to point out, we know that he will because he did.
He did leave office. This is not an academic question or hypothetical. He did. He left office on time. He contested a dubious election, and then he just left office on time, and it was all just normal. And to the point of the 22nd Amendment, there's one president who violated the spirit of that amendment and maybe the spirit of the constitutional norm, and that is a Democrat president, FDR, who did make himself the American monarch and stayed in power till he died. But I don't know that we even really need to knock FDR for this. If the debate were, did FDR violate constitutional norms, I guess we would say he did. But it's about Donald Trump, and it's a fact that at the end of his life, President Reagan was openly campaigning in the pages of the New York Times to repeal the 22nd Amendment. You'll recognize it's the 22nd Amendment. It wasn't in there at the beginning. It's relatively recent. I think that we do have term limits. The term limits are at the ballot box. And I actually think that the 22nd Amendment is contrary to American democracy. But much as I would like President Trump to have a third, fourth, or fifth term, I don't think that it's going to happen. We will not get Octavian Augustus Baron Trump to come in after him. President Trump will leave office at the end of his term because that is very much in keeping with the letter and spirit of the Constitution, which I hope I've demonstrated to you President Trump has upheld. So, a couple of things. I never said you didn't criticize the Pope about the image. I see your tweets. I know you did that. I said you won't criticize him for lying about the Pope yesterday. Do you agree he lied about the Pope on Monday and said he wants Iran to have nuclear weapons? Do you agree that's a lie? The Pope doesn't want Iran to have. I don't think that the Pope wants Iran to have nuclear weapons. So Trump lied. I think that President Trump and the Pope were having a disagreement from within the basis of. Won't do it. This is what the definition of a cult is, ladies and gentlemen. Ask me to criticize Barack Obama's lies. I will happily. I've just pointed out, but he's not lying because I think he believes it. Okay, he doesn't believe it. I think he does believe it. It's the great Trump defense for 10 years. Since we're doing predictions, I already admitted my predictions are bad, but relevant to this conversation, you had a great prediction. In the summer of 2024, you tweeted, there's no reason to believe, there's no evidence to suggest that Donald Trump won't accept the results of this election. The same can't be said about his opponents. That take age like milk in a hot desert, as we saw on January 6th. The idea that, oh, he left. Yeah, he left after exhausting every violent and non-violent option. There were guardrails. There was a guy, we haven't talked about him tonight, called Mike Pence, who actually stood up to him. Do you think J.D. Vance is going to stand up to Donald Trump in 2028? You think the man who threw his own wife under the bus is going to stand up to Donald Trump in 2028? No, there are no guardrails this time. There's no Jim Mattis. There's no John Kelly. There's none of the people from the first time who were semi-adults in the room. There's Kash Patel, RFK Jr., Tulsi Gabbard, and J.D. Vance. If that fills you with confidence on January the 6th, 2029, go for it. Some of us will still be skeptical about a man who completely, utterly is obsessed with power, says, I have a Second Amendment, I have an Article 2 right to do whatever I want, reposts quotes from Napoleon saying, if you save your country, you violated no laws. Yeah, you have. You're not above the law. Who says stuff like, you know what he said to the New York Times earlier this year when he was asked about international law? He said, my mind, my morality, that's the only thing that can stop me. Who talks like that? Autocrats talk like that. Dictators talk like that. If Barack Obama had talked like that, these guys would have gone nuts. But, you know, he saluted a military guy while holding a coffee, and that was a huge scandal. He also under Barack Obama, God, right? And Donald Trump has compared himself to God. In fact, he's reposted people and he posted an image of himself as God. Classic Michael. Oh, he took it down. But why did he put it up? You'll never criticize him for the original ad. You'll praise him for taking it down. And Pope is a good example. He cannot handle any criticism. If it's a Supreme Court justice, they're a lapdog and a fool. If it's the Pope, he wants Iran to have nuclear weapons. He recognizes no opposition. That is why he's so sui generis. That is why George Bush recognized opponents. I have to take a second shower tonight. George Bush recognized political opponents. Donald Trump doesn't recognize any power other than his own. That is why you should vote against this motion tonight.
Thank you both for sharing your time and your thoughts. We all really appreciated it. Nick is going to close this out.
All right, please join me in thanking Michael Knowles, Mehdi Hasan, and of course Ella Klinsky for providing us with such an engaging debate tonight.
Well done. Well done. Well done.
Now, at this time, please remain seated while our guests leave. And while you...
All right, so let's go to the comment section to see who won. 10% debate, 90% coughing, bruh. That's what I'm saying. It's just a lot of filibustering. It wasn't really any points that really harbored on. There was just like a lot of like bitching, especially from Mehdi Hasan's part. It's gonna be spit us, but this was just coughing that united us, bruh. The debate was brought to you by Ruben Tussin. Bro, somebody said Ruben Tussin. That's crazy. Can we turn down the mic? I can almost hear the debate over the coughing for a second. The asshole couldn't stay home when they're sick. Just so new viewers know, the coughing actually stops around the mid mark. It took 36 comments to get one that's not about the coughing, bruh. I came for a debate, but I stayed for I did it. Hold on. I forgot the coughing. Was there coughing in the first portion of the debate? If there was, I probably forgot. Let me go ahead and see. Yo, people are already just talking about the coughing in the comment section. I'm trying to look for see who won the debate, but it's like people are so they're so fucking fixated on the coughing. Like, where's the opinions about the debate, bro? That's what I'm worried about. Bro, people are only talking about the coughing. Come on, man. This is like embarrassing. Bruh. The entire comment section is about fucking coughing. I think on foreign policy, Mehdi had a stronger argument. Overall, I have to give it to Michael Knowles. not because of partisanship, it's because Michael just has stronger points or whatever. And then Mehdi's clearly just like using Trump derangement syndrome arguments. It's like he's just heavily fixated on like Trump says this, Trump says that, Trump says this. Like that's just like the entire argument just sounds like he's just him bitching and stuff for the most part. That he's just really just kind of like he's heavily fixated on what Trump says, you know, and basically just like heavily fixated on like, I don't know, some stupid shit or whatever, because that's all these guys do. They just heavily fixate on some of the most dumbest arguments on the planet. They get that straight as their position, but it just comes off of them just bitching about Trump. So that's all I gotta say about that one. Good debate. I still don't remember who the fuck was coughing. Was there somebody really coughing during the debate? I don't remember. I'm gonna go back and look at that again. But anyways, yeah, so good stream, y'all. Good stream. I love the camera now. The camera's doing good right now. So I look pretty fucking good now on the 4K camera. But anyways, I want to thank you guys for joining me for this debate. I will be back tomorrow with another stream for you guys. See you on the next one and have a good rest of your day.